I know this is going to sound really, really dumb to anyone that has more than two brain cells to rub together, but privacy isn't actually a binary. Occasionally I'll hear these really, really dumb complaints being made by the most hardcore privacy advocates you can imagine whenever there's any sort of big data leak, saying that the people who are affected by the data leak and the privacy concerns who are now deciding, okay, maybe it actually does make sense to take my privacy on the internet kind of seriously, are just massive hypocrites, because they're the same kind of people who go and post on things like Facebook or carry a phone around with their GPS always turned on, or use things like Discord and have all of their chats being logged. Because in the minds of these people, if you really cared about privacy, then you wouldn't be using those services anymore, and you'd be doing whatever list of things they say is enough to be actually private. But by that exact same logic, those people don't care about privacy, and not a single person on the planet actually does, because you're not taking every possible step to be as private as possible. Even by that logic, Richard Stallman doesn't care about privacy because he appears on video rather than living in solitude in the woods somewhere. But let's bring it back a little bit to something actually achievable. Is your main system air-gapped, meaning that it's not connected to any networks, even a local network, it's basically just plugged into electricity and it acts as a computer? Probably not. Do you do all of your networking through Tor from a second device at a different IP address? Because you definitely can't use the IP address at your house. That could be tracked back to you. Make sure you go to a cafe somewhere, and make sure you're also swapping every single day so people don't know exactly what cafe you're actually in if they track your traffic back past the exit node. Do you vet every single network package coming and leaving from your system? Do you vet every single line of code you ever run? Do you only use end-to-end encryption? And maybe some of you do, but I find that very, very unlikely if you leave a comment on this YouTube video. This is what I mean when I say that privacy isn't a binary. There are probably always more steps you can take to make yourself more private. The thing you have to consider with privacy, though, is attack vectors and your attack surface. So attack vectors are ways in which you can be attacked. So things like, say, telemetry, malware, IoT devices, data harvesting, and the attack surface is where the attacks can happen. So with instant messaging, on social media, at home, in public, things like that. Now, this is going to sound kind of controversial, but even the most staunch privacy advocates do need to decide how much privacy they're willing to give up to actually do the things in their life they want to be able to do. So most of us will agree that things like IoT devices, digital assistants, hidden telemetry are just flat out bad, and there's no reason to ever let those things be in your life. But what about something not as clear cut? What about, say, opt-in open source telemetry? Now, there's going to be people that say any sort of telemetry, even opt-in telemetry, is inherently bad. But I don't really care if it's opt-in. If it's opt-in and it's actually opt-in, not doing something secret in the background, and it tells me exactly what the terms of the telemetry are going to be, I don't care what is being collected. If I opt into it and it says, okay, we're going to collect a constant stream of your thoughts, I decided that was okay, and it being opt-in is perfectly fine. There is a massive security flaw in every single Linux system on the planet that nobody ever considers. When you go and download a new package with Pacman or apt or DNF or whatever package manager you use, you give the package manager root privileges, and it goes and downloads things from the package repository. Do you ever check if the package repository is actually what it's supposed to be? Or do you just assume that it hasn't been compromised? I'm gonna make a guess here, but I would say that the vast majority of Linux users never actually check if their package repository actually is safe. They just go and download it, assuming that it's not actually compromised. Why? Because most people don't consider that to be an important attack vector. I'm only picking out Linux here because it's something you can actually go and check for yourself, but the exact same applies to Windows 10 and macOS as well. If you download something from the Apple Store or the Microsoft Store, you probably assume that they haven't been compromised and just download stuff assuming it's going to be safe. Ultimately, everyone does have to decide for themselves what attack vectors actually are important. So even if you're defining them implicitly, you still have to decide. Most people probably know that if some random robocall calls them up pretending to be their tax office, you probably shouldn't give them your tax information, but there are still people who do, and this is where education actually is important. Even though a very large portion of the world does have a computer in their pockets, most people still don't understand how much power that actually has. Most people don't understand the danger of just downloading random files and just running it on their system, even though they probably should. Most people don't understand how much their data actually is worth to Facebook. They'll just say, oh, I don't have anything to hide, they can have the data. And this isn't where you call them dumb or you talk down to them, because doing that just makes it seem like whatever you're about to say is completely worthless. This is where you use your years of experience working with computers and being in privacy circles to explain why doing things like this actually is a really bad idea, and explain it in simple terms that people who aren't really tech literate actually can understand. So not just using actual problems like botnets and telemetry as a buzzword and then expecting people who have no idea what you're talking about to actually agree with you. Actually explain why things like this are a real problem. Why are botnets a problem? Why are telemetry a problem? And you'll find that a lot of people actually do start to understand, oh, yeah, this actually is a big deal. Basically, don't explain things to your grandmother like you're speaking to Richard Stallman. You're not exactly going to get anywhere. The reason why this is important is because without the knowledge of why something actually is bad and why you probably should be avoiding it, most people probably are just going to accept what they're being told by Facebook or what they're being told by Google. These are here to improve the user experience. We're not doing anything shady with this information, we promise. It's just here to make your life better. And once you actually know what's actually happening, then you can make a proper decision. And maybe you ultimately decide that for some parts of your life, you just don't really care about privacy. Maybe you're fine posting pictures on Facebook and then tagging your current location, or maybe you're fine carrying a phone around that has its GPS turned on. And maybe for public messages, you're fine using Discord. But for anything actually private, let's say you're having some sort of family discussion, that has to be done with end-to-end encryption. And you still cover the webcam on your laptop, but you'll still have an IoT device, let's say an Amazon Echo, always on in your house. I personally have people in my life that are exactly like this, many of whom were in the same classes as me, who actually do understand the privacy concerns of using things like an IoT device or using chat services like Discord, but they have decided for themselves they're willing to trade part of their privacy because they want some convenience. I think that everyone out there should have every right to be as private as they want on the internet. If you want to go and connect to a website using a pseudonym and you never post any pictures from your real life, and you want to do this through Tor and like 10 layers of VPNs just to make it as hard as possible to ever find you, I think that you should be allowed to do that. Even though there are many governments around the world trying to stop end-to-end encryption because they have literally no idea what that actually means, like mine for example, I don't think something like that should ever happen. But on the flip side, there's no reason to shame people who just don't really care about privacy. As I said earlier, shaming people into being private isn't going to work. They're just going to think you have no points that actually are worth anything and keep doing what they're doing anyway. Now, all of the arguments I've said in this video are completely separate from the fact that I don't think in the first place that websites like Facebook, Twitter, all of these IoT devices should be allowed to collect this information in the first place. But because this is the world we are living in, you sort of have to work around this world. I would like to see the world being improved, but until that happens, we sort of have to accept it as it is and make the most out of it. I don't really trust VPN services for privacy. If you want to go and actually have a private VPN, maybe you should host your own with Linode. If it runs on Linux, you can run it on Linode. They have the distros you'd expect available like Ubuntu and Debian, but also Arch and Gentoo because why not? They've got multiple server plans available, so whether you want to host a blog or even a personal VPN, there'll be one that fits you. I'll be using Linode to host all of my community game nights. If you need help, Linode has 24/7, 365 support available by phone, regardless of your plan size. Right now, you guys can get started on Linode with $100 credit by going to the link on screen or in the description down below. Linode was in the game 3 years before Amazon entered cloud computing, so you know they know their stuff. A huge thank you to Linode for sponsoring the channel. I think that's going to be everything for me, and before I go, I would like to thank my supporters. So a special thank you to Joachim, Donald, Logan, Michael, Andrew, Nathan, David, Carl, Will, Brennan, Chica Bento, Jamie, Joseph, Josh, Mitchell, Peter D, Stephen Tees, Through, Tony Sushar, and all of my $2 supporters. If you'd like to go and support, we'll work the links down below to my Patreon, subscribe star, leave a all that sort of stuff. I've got my podcast, Tech Over Tea, available basically anywhere, and then this channel is available on Odyssey. I've also got a gaming channel called Brodie Robertson Plays, where I live stream twice a week. So I think that's going to be everything for me, and I'm out.